Okay, does everybody know Kevin? Kevin's been tying flies with us for almost 30 years now.
30 years almost.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so, especially good Ozark patterns. Used to fish the North Fork of the White with me a whole lot. And, but he does lots of striper patterns and bass patterns and all that kind of stuff that we sell over there. Anyway, so you've got some nymphs for us?
Yeah, today I kind of
Probably
figured,
haven't seen.
yeah, these are some nymphs you
You've been
probably
holding
haven't
out on
seen.
me. I haven't seen those.
Yeah. I had this pattern I've been fishing for 20 years, but, you know, in the wintertime like this, we would always change up something different. And you know, back in the early 90s, they came out with patterns called Triger Nymphs, you know, when they would tie things into a nymph to kind of trigger that strike. You know, it's just kind of the new fad thing to do. And it always stuck with me, and it works. This time of year when the fishing's kind of slow, it's cold, their feeding process has changed a little bit. I fish these Triger Nymphs, and they seem to do well. And this little pattern here, I've called it the Mad Prince, and it's basically a hybrid version of a Prince nymph. You know, it's just got all these little features in it that trigger the strikes. This is the same thing. I use this as a streamer pattern, but it can be fished as a nymph. Just kind of a sculpting, crawdad, whatever you want to call it, kind of pattern. And again, it's got a little bit of egg yarn in it that will trigger that strike.
No, that's what he said. This is like a Chernobyl prince.
Yeah, yeah. He was exposed to something too long. But I'll start with that little Prince nymph, and it's a pretty simple little pattern.
He's got a spot here, he's got legs. He's like a buffet.
Yeah, it's like probably I was bored or something.
What size hoop?
This is a little 10. It's a 52-62, and I do it in a size 10. And then, of course, that fly, that Prince, I would use it. I would tie a dropper of some sort to it. I am blind now. So I always put a bead on them. You can see the hole. I had a box sitting here. There it is. Just like this.
He was there a minute ago.
It was a long drive up. I drank a lot of coffee. Well, gee whiz. You guys get the idea, don't you?
Yeah. Been there.
You need to get the beater up.
Yeah, magnet over the floor now.
There we go.
Yeah. What you need?
Then I add a little bit of this just 0.25 lead onto it and give it some more weight. And again, I don't know about you guys, even my nymph patterns, just to change up, I'll dead drift them through the water, and then on the swing twitch them a little bit, especially when you have these little trigger effects on them.
And the trigger on this one is maybe that little piece of orange on the
Yeah,
tail.
yeah. The color of the thorax, you know, I always use this kind of little fiery orange color. I mean, I'm sure you could change up a ton of different colors. This is just what's worked for me.
Yeah.
I just take a piece of this fluorescent orange. It's a round rubber. I'm just tying a little tag in right down the center of the shank. You can kind of clip it any length you desire. And then I just use rubber for the tails instead of biots like a normal Prince would have. You can cut them as short or as long as you want. I usually tie everything in a little long and then come back and trim it down later. We're going to rib it with some gold tinsel here. Does anybody ever go back down to Bennett Springs anymore, or is that place?
I do.
You? This is a great fly for down there. Down below that Whistle Bridge, I would catch a lot of fish. Get into smallmouth down around there.
Smallmouth at Bennett?
Yeah, in the wintertime they'll come up into the park sometimes.
Yeah, there ought to be in there now. I saw about a 4-pounder in the bait fishing area last time I was there. Down west of the big, huge log in the water.
So then we'll just tie in some peacock curl here.
I was down there when the Heart of America had their that's when I did it. Trying to find a place to fish.
I'm just going to run that peacock curl just halfway up that shank because that thorax is going to have a dubbing. And just run my rib forward. Sometimes on this pattern here, I'm just using these centipede legs right now, which works great. But sometimes I'll change up the rubber. I'll put flexi-floss up in the front and then the round rubber in the back and get two different types of movement out of it. At least in my mind it works. Well, I skipped a step. We're going to tie in some biots. This is just a white goose biot. Just like you would tie in a normal standard prince. You can do the same pattern in theory of a pheasant tail nymph too, you know, just tying a little different trigger effect to it. That ice dubbing, a lot of time I'll take the ice dubbing. Have you ever done that? Make a little dubbing ball with it, put the dubbing on it, and then push it down and then tie it around, almost like a post style for a dry fly. And then that'll create a little trigger effect. It looks like a little emerging nymph or something. Now we'll tie on the rubber. And I like to leave these legs long just so I can run my dubbing through there and control it a little better. Again, any color dubbing you want. Just kind of manipulate and adjust everything the way you want it. That's it. Just a real simple, basic little pattern. I like to trim everything down to what I like. And then just pick out that thorax a little bit, kind of give it a little more of a buggier look. But yeah, this time of year, if I'm trout fishing, I like to tie these little flies that have these little trigger effects to them. It really seems to change things up. You know, if those fish have been being fished all summer, they're seeing the same pattern by everybody. It's just something different. But that's it. It's just a basic little simple little Prince pattern. Entire little drop.